Take you back to politics in South Africa now, shall we? Coalition governments seem to be bringing mayoral instability across the country. Leadership hasn't been lasting, with just 3 of the country's 8 metros still having mayors who were elected after the previous municipal election. Today, Tshwane is once again attempting to elect a new mayor. For more on mayoral instability in the country, political analyst Lukhona Mnguni joins us now. He is also a host on a very important political show here on eNCA. Lukhona, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Let's just start with what came out of the briefing by the ANC Secretary General not so long ago. He was asked about Phakathi, the Buffalo City mayor, and why they are recalling him. His answer was very simple. I think it was 2 sentences. He says the ANC has every right to recall whoever they want and redeploy, etc. Do you buy that?
Well, Maseko, if you just take time and go to the city of Buffalo City, if you look at East London and the dilapidation of that city, I was there just not long ago, about a week and a half, and frequenting that city, it really is shocking, the state of the city, but akin to a number of cities that have just simply deteriorated under the leadership of the ANC. Of course, there might be other political considerations that they have, but my sense is that at the heart of it, just like as the ANC leadership was quite embarrassed to be at the city of Mangaung, and that led to the recall of that, mayor as well, is that the ANC will probably attempt to show an active ANC that is trying to do something about deployees who are failing to deliver. But there may as well be other underlying political, considerations, as you know, that the ANC is still coming out of those provincial and national elective conferences, and there's been a lot of reconfiguration of deployments across the board, depending on the political outcomes of those elective conferences that took place during the year 2022.
Now, when we look at cities such as the city of Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane, it's not only the multi-party coalition led by the DA that kind of failed the citizens of Tshwane, but it also the Murunwa Makwarela developments that came out about 2 weeks ago, fake certificates, etc., and that also put COPE in a certain light. And then Action SA last week Friday firing 2 councillors because they voted a certain way. Does this instability by all the other political parties that form part of these coalitions, particularly in Gauteng, give the ANC any power? Does it help the ANC at all?
I don't think in the eyes of the citizens it helps the ANC, because, Maseko, some citizens state that the deterioration and dilapidation of these cities did not start under the coalition government. In actual fact, the very issue that led to citizens voting differently in 2016, particularly in the bigger metros, was because they were dissatisfied with the leadership of the ANC in these metros and their approach to issues. So that does not necessarily aid the ANC. What it does, and this is what I've been picking up on some of the research I've been involved with this year, is that it further makes citizens cynical about whether or not solutions for development, solutions for good governance will come from the current lot of political parties that is available. And I think it's just a demonstration of how not serious these political parties are, and all these things that they keep doing, whether, in the city of Tshwane, it's Action SA doing polygraph tests on its, caucus members in that council, or it's the DA speaking about, sniffing out the traitors. I mean, Celias Brink has really said some very bizarre statements that show you the kind of almost authoritarian leadership that they want to employ over the public representative at the slightest, indicator that not everybody in their caucus is singing from the same tune as the leadership. So I think what further is happening is the erosion of confidence in political parties generally by the mere effect of the behavior of these coalition partners. And this is a crisis for democracy and not only just for these individual political parties. Because the moment people no longer have confidence in the political actors available in their country, it then means that they begin to switch out of democracy, and that's when we get to see things such as poor voter turnout and poor voter participation in elections.
And I think what you're raising is quite important, Lukhona. So maybe legislation should be changed a bit or improved, especially when it comes to coalition governments and secret ballots, because right now what's being displayed to the citizen, at least, is that it's a numbers game and it depends on who can do what for who, etc. That's how it looks to citizens, especially in metros and Gauteng.
I think, Maseko, we must avoid falling into the trap of narratives by certain political parties who would then say, you know, their members are probably using the secret vote to be induced and, you know, vote in a particular way. I mean, let's go back to Nelson Mandela Bay municipality where, in actual fact, there was no secret ballot. A DA councillor just refused to vote against the motion of no confidence on Athol Trollip, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And in that council, by the way, there were further investigations and councillors and former councillors were arrested for having been induced. Now, you don't always, inducement doesn't always have to happen in the environment of a secret ballot. So the secret ballot is not necessarily the problem. The problem is the quality of politicians, the integrity of politicians, and just the type of, you know, individuals in some of these political parties. That's one. The second one, though, which is not well highlighted, is that some members of these political parties feel undermined by political leadership, where 2 people or 3 people take a decision and it becomes a decision of the party that must be imposed on the caucus. So again, there's a crisis of internal democracy in some of these parties where the leaders don't want to be challenged by their caucus members. Why are you asking me to vote in a particular way? Can we have a conversation? Can we, deliberate and then reach a democratic outcome, whether by way of consensus or voting in the caucus? But sometimes decisions are imposed on these party caucuses at the whims of political bosses who don't sit in these councils, who don't have to work in these councils, who don't have to contend with the day-to-day running of these councils, and at times they impose leaders in those councillors whom it might prove very difficult for those councillors to work with on the day-to-day. So I think the issues are quite vast, and it cannot just be that there is a fear that people are being bribed, there's a fear that people are being swayed because of the secret ballot. The crisis begins much further than a secret ballot. I mean, you know, Maseko, in Parliament, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma decided not to support the ANC position. There was no secret ballot, but she still, voiced out in that way. There is a number of incidents in local government that I can give you over the last 15 years where councillors have been fired because they openly supported a motion of no confidence in the mayor, which by virtue of things is an open ballot. So it's not the secret ballot that is the problem. I think it's also the inner workings of these coalition arrangements. And lastly, yes, you're quite correct. We do need to move towards a coalition building framework in this country, whether by way of legislation or by way of regulation. And I think that's going to be one of the big talking points for some people in the civil society space over the next 12 months as we build up towards what might become a national and some provincial coalitions in 2024 after the elections.
Well, as the election, it seems we have reached a political quagmire, haven't we, Lukhona? You're describing that top-down approach. It was complained about by Mpho when she was still mayor for the DA in the city of Johannesburg. We saw Bongani Baloyi of Action SA also resigning, saying that there's just too much overreach from a national level. We've seen it with the ANC, them being involved in negotiations from a provincial or national level, etc. We've seen the toe the party line issue also happen in Parliament during the Phala debate. So where do we look then? Because it looks like it's the entire political spectrum in South Africa that is an issue.
No, it's all these political parties. I have argued that a number of them are completely distracted from the business that needs to be carried out in safeguarding this democracy, in securing the ethos embedded in our constitution of people's power that, from the traditions of the liberation movement, when people used to sing, the people shall govern. It's now the political parties governing. And this is seen, Maseko, also on the, attempts by political party to undermine the Constitutional Court judgment on the issue of electoral reform. And that's why you and I have spoken previously about the flaws in the current electoral amendment bill.
Yeah.
So there are a number of activities that political parties are doing to safeguard power to safeguard power into political parties and not take it back to people. And I think this is part of the problem. Political parties use certain leaders to win particular elections, use leaders who have local constituencies to gain and leverage from that. But when it comes to crunch time in terms of how those local municipalities are governed, the national leadership, the provincial leadership wants to dictate and not negotiate as it did when it was electioneering. And again, these are all the things that are eroding confidence in our democracy because it has become too party-centric rather than citizen-centric.
Yep. Thank you very much, Lukhona, for speaking to us. I remember a certain president saying in Parliament, what came first, democracy, South Africa, or the ANC? Political analyst Lukhona Mnguni. He is also the host of On the Spot with Lukhona Mnguni at 12 o'clock noon here on eNCA every Sunday.